All right, let's go and get started. First up, would you all like some good news? Oh, you don't? You want some bad news? Oh, okay, good news. Okay. I decided something a little bit yesterday. Our next two lectures are on formatting and sorting and viewing options, and then we have a lecture, it's supposed to be on Tuesday, on some various aspects with additional charts, some formula auditing and whatnot. And to be perfectly honest, they're pretty short lectures in their own respect. And with the real celebration coming up of spring break, what I decided to do was this. So here's the announcement slide for today, and this is what I'm going to do. So on Tuesday, we're supposed to have class, and I've decided not to. Okay? What I'm going to do is this. I'm going to be around, like I'll be here and I'll be in my office, because you all do still have a homework due on Tuesday. But what I'm going to do is this. We're not going to specifically have class. Okay? What I'm going to do is this. That morning, I'm going to pull all the files from the network drive, and if you have your homework 5 turned in, you don't need to be here. Okay? So I'll leave that sort of on you, and we just won't have class next Tuesday, and we weren't going to have class next Thursday anyways. So what do y'all think? Sound good? Are you sure? Because, I mean, I know you all are just hungry for knowledge. All right. We'll get the sign-in sheet started. So what we're going to do today is we're going to sort of knock out Lecture 18 and Lecture 19 all at once, because they actually are pretty short. I'm not saying they're not important, but they're not long on their own. They're actually pretty concise topics. And I think today, you'll get the feel for today that what our goal is to sort of close business associated with Excel. In other words, look, I know for a fact that there's little things here and there that we haven't covered in Excel, okay? But I think we've covered the broad strokes. I mean, you all know how to do basic computations, you know how to do basic plots, you know some basic programmings, and you already have a very large wealth of formulas at your disposal. I mean, you know how to calculate sums and statistics and do some trig and all of that. So I think you all are pretty well equipped. So we're going to cover 9 and 10 today and close it out, and then we won't meet next Tuesday, as well as next Thursday. So sound good? All right, then let's get to it. So the downside, I guess, is we might actually go to 9:15 today. So, but I'd rather do that and just sort of knock it out all at once. Okay, so let's get into our final topics for Excel. And this is sort of, I guess, the softer stuff associated with Excel. Like, we're not getting into rough and tough calculation stuff today, but we're getting more into the formal presentation of calculations. Like, here's the idea behind the lectures the stuff we're talking about today. So I think up until now, I've taught you all how to do basic computations in Excel. And you all are going to get out of here, and let's say you take me for structural analysis. So one of the things that we learn in structural analysis is how to compute things like the deflection of a beam. Okay, and you all had that on your first exam. I gave you a beam and I gave you the formula and I said, okay, do a little plot for me. Okay, now you all can do the calcs, but what if I didn't give you a nicely pre-formatted sheet? What if I just said, here's the problem, give me a chart? Okay, now I think you all can do the Excel calculations appropriately, and when you get to structural analysis, we'll learn all the theory and the math behind it. But what I'm getting at is, what if I took your spreadsheet and gave it to her and said, now, she's got to be able to use your spreadsheet, and vice versa, and did that with everybody else in the class. Everybody created an Excel spreadsheet, and then they put it on a flash drive, and then we put the flash drives in a box and started drawing them out and said, okay, you had to interpret somebody else's. The point I'm making is that one of the things that we have to be able to do in Excel is not just perform calculations appropriately, but also perform them transparently. What I mean by that is you need to have a sheet that's neatly formatted. You can't have fonts that are crazy and calculations that are all the way over here. I mean, you need to create something that's very neat. One of the big aspects of performing engineering computations is they must be able to withstand the scrutiny of independent review. when I design a highway bridge, I'm not in a standalone, universe. I mean, I'll perform my calculations and go look at any set of engineering computations for a real-life project, and you'll see two boxes. It'll say calculations performed by, and you'll see somebody's name or initials, and then you'll see calculations checked by, and you'll see somebody's name or initials. Now, if I'm doing it by hand and they're written in chicken scratch, you can barely read what I'm writing, you have no idea what I'm talking about, it'd make it a little tough for you to do a calculation review. So you have to present those calculations formally and clearly, and that's really what I want to talk about today in the world of Excel. Now, to sort of frame our discussion, let's just have a little bit of fun with it. So I have here two cells. Now they contain the same data, 2.4, okay? But they're different. They're different in a number of ways. So what's the difference? What did I do on the cell here to generate that? I mean, just start spitting some stuff out. Okay, so I changed the color, but changing the color, even that, I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. I mean, the font went from black to this sort of navy blue. The background went to this tan, and then the border is this like burnt orange, type color. So it's changing the color, yeah, but I changed a lot of colors. Okay, so that's number one. What else? Okay, we got font, and I'm gonna get to yours in a second. So font, looks like something out of the 1920s or something, right? On like the marquee of an old theater or something. So I changed the font. Now, what did you say? It's got a dollar sign, and honestly, that has a very significant, connotation to it. 2.4 is a number, but $2.40. I mean, while it's the same number, it has a very different meaning associated with it. So I have told Excel to format this number as if it was currency. Okay. And now we're dealing with dollars, obviously, in the United States, but I could have said pounds or yen or what have you. So I could have used a different currency. There's another one. What else? A little more subtle, but it's there.
Border around the box.
Okay, we got the border around the box, that burnt orange. Centered up. There you go. On the left, the number's hugged to the right. Remember, when you put a number in Excel, it automatically hugs that number to the right, indicating that that is, in fact, data. But now I've centered it. Okay, so you kind of see what's going on? I mean, I think one of the biggest sort of telling formats is the fact that what you mentioned, that it's money. Automatically, your brain thinks differently. Your brain thinks, okay, we're in the financial world. We're doing calculations. So if I had a spreadsheet and I had a bunch of numbers, that's one thing. But if I had a bunch of dollar figures, maybe my spreadsheet is a checkbook register. Maybe I'm balancing my checkbook, and that's what I'm using Excel for, which, I mean, Excel's a great program for that, right? You got a starting balance, you wrote a check, you used your debit card, you went to a concert, so there's your debit, here's how much money you have left. I mean, Excel works great for that. There's templates you can download all around for currency calcs. Does that make sense? Okay, so what we're going to do today is talk specifically about the different ways that you can format a given cell, and I want you all to sort of play around with this as we get into it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hop back and forth a little bit, but I do want to pull up our example. So if you go to Blackboard and you download the format example, we have this. Now, there's no correct way of doing this. I really just want to have a little fun with it. First off, I'm curious, does anybody recognize what that is? Anybody have any idea what that is? It's your times tables, right? So, for instance, if I have this cell right here, that is, I've got 8 there and 3 there, so 8 times 3 is 24. That's literally what this is. It's just your times tables. This is bringing up nightmares from 3rd or 4th grade. Right? Now, you all, bless you, I think you all know by now how to read this formula, or this table. You're going off of the first row, or the first row and the first column to, find a given set of numbers, so 14 times 3, and then that tells you 42. So right off the bat, from a formatting standpoint, don't you think that the first row and the first column ought to look a little differently? Maybe they ought to be bold or colored differently or something like that. So I can go in, I'm going to zoom out a little bit by hitting Control and the mouse wheel. But I can say, you know what? These cells, And these cells make them yellow. Now, if you're wondering how I'm selecting multiple cells, I'm using the control button. So literally I can select some cells and then hold control and select some more and select some more and select some more and select some more. So I can use the control button to do that. But right off the bat, just that one simple formatting change, I think, helped clarify a lot of what's going on in this table, I just used one of the automatic, the paint bucket was automatically yellow. But everybody kind of see where I'm getting at? There's a lot of, different aspects that you can do to change the format of a given cell. Now, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Let me go to one of these cells. Let's go to this one. Okay, let's start off with just basic formatting of the cell, and there's a lot that you can do up here in this font and alignment toolbar. So for instance, looking at this, I can change the color, I can change the font color, make it red, I can bold, italicize, underline it, I can change it to Arial, I can change the font, I can make it bigger or smaller. So this button right here, that's the bigger, make the font bigger and smaller. I can also go in and make it whatever font size I want. I can center it up. I can do all of that. So there's a lot of different things I can mess around with. Okay? Everybody kind of get the idea? So there's a few different things you can play around with. Let's see. I got this because there's a lot of things I could forget, so I'm using this to sort of help me out. Now, one of the very useful tools to use with formatting is this paintbrush. It's called the Format Painter. And the idea behind the paintbrush is, let's say I've got this one cell right here, the one with the number 1, and I got it and it looks just the way I want it. And I've spent a lot of time getting this cell to look exactly right. Well, instead of doing the same thing over here, what I can do is I can say, all right, let's say I'm over here. I can select this cell, hit the paintbrush, and then highlight a bunch of these, and then now they all are formatted the same way. You know what I mean? So you can spend a lot of time getting one cell to look the way you want, and once okay, I like that. Just repeat that format. It's kind of like copying and pasting, but you're not copying and pasting the contents. You're copying and pasting the way the cell looks. Okay, so you're changing the format by just repeating what you had in a previous cell. So I'll undo that. Okay, does that make sense? Everybody okay with that? I don't like that. I'll go back to what I had, and that's where the Format Painter comes into play. Make sense? So hopefully you all are sort of playing around with that and just have a little fun, do whatever you want. There's a problem on homework 1 where you are supposed to create a table on your sheet. It says on the homework, you can format it however you'd like. Just make sure I can read it, like no Wingdings font or what have you. Do people still use Wingdings or Webdings or what have you? All right. Let's see, what else? Okay, this is a good one. All right, so I'm going to just go over here and mess around with some typing. So let's say I have an area, okay? And the units for area are inches squared, but that's not how I would write it if I was using a pencil, right? The 2 would be written above. It would be a superscript, okay? Unfortunately, there's no shortcut key right here for superscript. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to go into my formula bar and highlight the cell of interest, or the number of interest, in this case the 2. And I want to be clear, if you ever want any more options as opposed, or when it comes to the font, the alignment, or whatnot, you can always click these little dialog boxes right there. You click that, and then you get a much more detailed box that pops up. And one of the things you can change is the effect of whether or not your text is superscript, subscript, strike through, or anything like that. So we'll go through and make that a superscript and hit OK. And now it looks like inches squared. Does everybody see that? And so you can, if you looked on the in-class exercise 2, what I would have on some of the velocities is I'd have something like V sub O, like the initial velocity, And what I would do is I would highlight that 0, and I would go to font, and I would make that a subscript. And then it would look like that. So, does that make sense? Not so bad, right? Simple stuff. Let's see, what else? Okay, this is a nifty one. One of the other things that you can do is change the alignment of the font within a given box. Now, in other words, you can take the font and actually turn it. Now, you might go, well, why would that be useful? Sometimes when you're developing a table, you'd like to have a really, really detailed title for some of the cells, but if you did that, it would make the cells huge. So what you can do is you can turn that text a little bit and make the cell formatted quite nicely. So what I have here, this is a spreadsheet that I made to compute the alternative presentation grades for the students that are taking senior design. So for the civil engineers, they'd have a grade for their structural engineering aspects, their geotechnical aspects, etc. So what I would do is I'd say, all right, I'll put this on a new sheet. So notice you can always create a new sheet by just going down here and just adding. So I'd have something like, go over here, we'll have something like grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, what have you. You can highlight all of that. And then up here where it has this A, B, and you can see the arrow sort of going like that under alignment, you can go through and say, we'll angle that counterclockwise, and then it highlights that up. Then I can fill the cells, border them up, and then you've got a nice little angled set of text for a column or for a tabletop. So works out pretty nicely. So yeah, and then I can do some other stuff to clean that up here in a little bit. Everybody with me so far? This isn't too bad, right? Pretty straightforward stuff. So let's see. Okay, this is a good one. This one of the other things I want to mention is, does everybody see on the top where it says merge and center? See that? Okay. The merge and center button is right here next to alignment. What that will do is it will take a bunch of cells and combine them, okay, and actually create one single cell. So if you notice on one of the exercises that we did in class, we had a heading that looked something like this. So it was our projectile motion problem. Remember, you had the little projectile and we threw it and it went like that? All right, remember that? So we would have time, and then based on those increments of time, we would have an X and Y position. Well, so what I had is I had something like this. So if you notice, we had, time is in seconds. We had X was in meters. We had Y was also in meters. Something like that, right? Okay. Well, if you type in plot values, yeah, that's nice, but it's not centered over the table. Well, what you can do is you can take a cell, it doesn't matter where it is, you can highlight that cell. Then if you hit merge and center, it'll actually take those cells and make them one, and it'll put that text in the middle. And that's great for if you're trying to head a table or put a heading on a table. So, and you can do that for as many cells as you want. Like you could go down here and you could say, all right, I'll just type something. Merge. I can highlight a bunch of cells, and there you go. Now this is all one cell on the sheet. Like to sort of illustrate it on the screen, I can, put a bunch of borders on these cells, and you can kind of see, instead of these becoming individual cells, they've all merged into one. Now, one final point, these buttons right here, these 6 buttons will change the alignment of that text in the cell. In other words, do I want it to be on the left? Do I want it to be on the center? Do I want it to be on the right? Do I want it to be on the bottom, the middle, or the top? So I can do that if I want. Everybody kind of following with me? This isn't so bad, is it? Pretty straightforward stuff. We're just having fun. We're just playing around with stuff at this point. Any questions? I hope I'm not going too fast. If I'm going too fast, tell me. We got time. Everybody good? All right. Let's see what else. Okay. All right. Now we have talked about the different ways to format the way a cell looks. Now let's talk about the way to format the number. Okay. And this was one of the big things that you pointed out on that 2.4 cell, that one of the differences between the original 2.4 and the resulting format was that it was formatted to look like money, right? Okay, so this is where we can sort of play around with that for a little bit. So I do want to spend a little bit of time to mess around with this. Here, let me close this, because I want to open up a new sheet so the text is a little bigger. Because I've got the settings on this particular computer set up to where the font shows up a little bigger. There we go. That's nice. Okay, so let's put in that number 2.4. Let's see how we can mess around with that. Okay, so right now I'm messing around with this number dialog box right here. So one of the things that we can do is using these two buttons here and here, these increase and increase decimals, this will increase our precision. So if we only want to report the number to 1 decimal place or 2 decimal places or what have you, we can mess around with that. So this is how we can control how Excel will display the data. So it'll automatically round for us if we need it to. We can just say round to this many decimal places. Excuse me. Speaking of, if you go down this dialog box, you can play around with different ways of displaying. So for instance, currency, we can do accounting, and accounting is basically currency, but it aligns it, the number a little differently. Let's see, scientific, right here at the bottom, we can do scientific notation. So 2.4 times 10 to the 0. You know, we can have our numbers automatically spit out in scientific notation. Sound good? Now, if you really want to get fancy, one of the ways that you can mess around with this is you can actually have custom formats. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to mess around with this cell right here. In fact, let me highlight it. Okay? Now remember, anytime that you want to have more control, hit the little button for the dialog box. So if you hit the number format button, that'll pop up. So this is where, you know, you can do general, number, currency. You can put the comma in for any time you have a thousandths place. I'm going to have a fun one with you. Let's look at custom. So custom is how you can control the way Excel will display a number by developing a custom format. So to give you an idea, one of the numbers that human beings, or one of the types of numbers that human beings on this planet use quite a bit are phone numbers, right? Okay, so how does a phone number look in the United States? Well, we have 3 digits for an area code, 3 primary digits, and then 4 secondary digits, right? Well, the way that I can mess around with this is watch. I can go, I can create a new format. So I'm going to go into where it says type. And you create your display format by using zeros. So would you agree that a phone number, would you agree that a phone number in the United States probably looks like this? 000, 000, something like that. I mean, the numbers are obviously different. We're using zeros as our placeholders. Would you agree with that? Okay, so let's go with that. So hit OK. All right, so what's the typical area code in West Virginia? 304. So 304, and then I'm not putting my phone number on a recording on YouTube, so we'll do like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So watch this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I'm not doing anything else. Okay, I'm just pressing enter, and then it automatically formatted it like a phone number. Pretty nifty, huh? So you can have a little bit of control and authority in how Excel displays your numbers. And again, you've got multiple different options, percentages, accounting, what have you. You can do whatever you want. Sound good? One of the things that's also really neat about Excel is that Excel does a really good job with dates and times. But the way Excel handles date and time it needs a little bit of discussion. So Excel only understands numbers, okay? But let's also be clear, Excel will do date and time calculations. Like if you say today is March 9th, right? And then you say, well, how many days until spring break? And you know that spring break starts on March 17th. You can literally do March 17th minus March 9th, and it will tell you 8 days. Like it'll do the math, okay? But for Excel to do that, it needs to convert a date into a number. It needs to be able to do numerical calculations. So when you put in a number and you want it to recognize it as a date, this is how Excel works. So when we look at date and time data, date and time data would be something like this. So 6890 point whatever. Okay. So the 6890 is the date number, and the decimal value is the time number. Excel begins all of its calculations on January 1st, 1900. So 6890 would be the number of days essentially past that day, January 1st, 1900. So we'll put in today's date and we'll see what that is. The time would be whatever the hours are divided by 24 plus whatever the minutes are divided by 1440 plus whatever the seconds are divided by 86,400. Now, I think it's pretty easy to know where the hours are coming from, right? There's 24 hours in a day, right? So if I put 6890.5, that would be whatever that date is at noon, right? Because you'd be essentially 0.5, that's half the day, right? If the day begins at midnight, then 0.5, that's noon, right? 0.25, that would be what, 6 a.m.? Make sense? And 0.75, that'd be 6 p.m., and you kind of get the gist. The 1440, well, there's 24 hours in a day, and there's 1,440 minutes in a day, right? 60 minutes in an hour, 24, so 60 times 24. There's 86,400 seconds in a day. That's where that's coming from. So let me show you how this works. Let's go into Excel, and let's put in today's date. Now I can literally just say, 3/9/17. And bam, it's already recognizing that as a date. It says, oh, that's March 9th, okay? And I can do calculations with that. I mean, I can go down here and I can literally say, what's tomorrow? By saying equals that plus 1. And there we go. But if I take this number and I convert it back into a general number, it tells me 42,803. Because today is 42,803 days past January 1st, 1900. That's the baseline. That's the starting date for Excel calculations. Does that make sense? Is everybody okay with that? Any questions at all? Okay. Okay. Oh, last thing that's worth mentioning is you can also change the width and height of rows and columns. So if I go back to my, let me close all this. If I go back to my little times table sheet, I actually do want to keep this one open for a little bit. And if I take this given cell, I mean, I can go right here to the C. If you notice, if I hover, see how I get that? See that little symbol right there where it looks like it wants to change the width? I can go in and I can, I can go in and I can extend that. Oh, mouse is being touchy. Oh, there we go. I can make that row, or that column wider. I can make that row. Oh, come on. There we go. Come on. This computer's touchy with this sometimes. Oh, there we go. I can make that row taller. I can do that. Control Z to undo. I can also say, you know what? Instead of trying to be smart, why don't I just let Excel do it for me? So I can highlight all these columns, and I can just double-click that little symbol, and it'll automatically squeeze them to fit all the data in those cells. So it takes all that and squunches it up. The downside is you have a lot of data all in one place. If you like your data and your table spread out, you probably wouldn't want to do that. But if you're trying to collapse your data into a smaller range, it might be a better avenue. Again, just highlight. You can highlight all your cells or the columns and just double click right there when you get that symbol. You got to have that symbol there, that little that solid black line with the two arrows, either this way or the other way. You got to have that double click, or got to have that to double click. Sound good? Any questions? Okay. Now let's talk also about something else, and this is a pretty nifty one. You can also sort data. You can use the sorting command. I think we've already messed around with this, so I'm not going to get into it very significantly. But we've already used sorting, right? Where we've taken data and sorted it. The smallest numbers on top and the largest numbers on the bottom. We've done that before, right? Okay. One of the other points I guess it's worth mentioning. I don't think I'm even going to demonstrate it. But you can sort based on multiple levels. So to give you kind of an idea of an example where that would be relevant, sorting names would be a very great example of sorting based on multiple levels. Because let's take the people in this class, right? So if I'm trying to develop the roster for the attendance, I'm going to sort based on your last name, right? I'm going to put the A's first and the Z's last and go like that, right? Well, what if I have two students with the last name of Smith, right? Well, then what do I do? Well, I've got the last name sorted. Well, then I sort based on the first name, right? So I put Luke and then Malik, right? So that everybody kind of see what I'm talking about? Or Adkins. We've got two students here with the last name of Adkins. So, I've got to sort that accordingly. So what I might do is I might say, all right, let's sort by the last names, then add a level and sort by the first names. And if I've got two John Does, well then sort by the middle names, If that doesn't work, well, sort by their birth date. I don't know. If they were born on the same day, I'm running out of ideas, So, I'm just being funny. All right, does everybody kind of get the idea there? Okay, the last thing, at least from a formatting standpoint, I want to talk about is viewing. And I think I've talked about some of this, but I really want to elaborate on it. We have a fair degree of control over how Excel displays the sheet to us. For instance, let me go back to the example of the times tables. So I'm going to go to the View tab up here. Let me go to the View tab. All right, so there's a lot of things going on the View tab that I do want to mess around with a little bit. So, for instance, if you look here where it says grid lines, I can check that, and it actually turns the grid off. Does everybody see it? The actual grid lines for the spreadsheet are gone. So I actually turn mine off more often than not. Okay. We can also change the sheet's view from a printing standpoint. So for instance, if I click page layout, now this is what it looks like if I were to hit print, So to show you something, let me go back a little bit in time. Let's go to this. Y'all remember doing this, the in-class exercise? Remember that where we did the slab calculator? Watch this. I can go to view, and I can go to page layout, and you'll notice the headings are there. Remember the headings we created? So when I hit print, I know this is what it's going to look like. So I can, if I'm trying to be green and, Captain Planet, he's our hero. Okay, we got some folks who remember the Captain Planet. Okay, it makes me happy. Okay, but if I'm trying to make sure that the page looks the way I want it to look before I hit print, I can actually view it from a page layout standpoint. Everybody cool? Yes.
Since that page was the only one highlighted, that doesn't print.
No, that's a good question. It's not because that page is the only one highlighted. What it's saying is this. Let me go here, and this is an easy one to show once I do this. All right, if you notice, one of the pages is white and the rest are all grayed out. The reason why they're grayed out is because there's nothing in those sheets. If I go in and type a 4 right here, then Excel realizes, okay, I have to print this sheet because there's something there. Once I hit delete and go out, it's like, oh, well, there's nothing there. We don't need to hit print. Is that what you're asking? Everybody else okay with that? All right. Let me get back to normal because there is another one I want to mess around with. I use this quite a bit, actually, in my use. And this is the window commands right here. Okay. I want to show you what freeze panes are, okay? Because I use this quite a bit when I develop a grade book. So let me clear this up by highlighting these cells and highlighting that. Okay. Okay. So the freeze panes command, what that'll do is change the way that your sheet looks as you scroll through it. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to hover over this particular cell right here, this 1, and I'm going to hit freeze panes. So this and freeze panes. Now if you did that, what you should have seen is a big sort of plus sign that shows up. Now watch what happens when you start scrolling. Everybody see that? Let me zoom out a little bit. See, what it did is it froze those particular rows of display. Does everybody see that? Now, where is that useful? Well, it's useful when I've got something like this. So let's say I've got a bunch of students, and I've got all their homework grades and their attendance grades all in one big Excel spreadsheet. So what I have is for my grade book, I have it frozen to where if you want to know how you did on homework 5 or something, what I'll do is I'll say, all right, this is student number 14, and I'll just sort of scroll over until I get to homework 5, and then, you know, you got a 280, so you did pretty good on it. Does everybody kind of see that? So freezing, I use freeze panes quite a bit, and I would say it's more useful if you've got really, really big spreadsheets. You know, you can freeze, you know, your top row or your top column or what have you, and it'll make your life a little easier. All right, let me unfreeze. There we go. And I just did that by going under freeze panes and clicking unfreeze. Sound good? All right, let's see. Is there any other formatting big ticket items or viewing items? Oh, I guess the last thing that's worth mentioning is page layout. So if you're getting ready to print, if you go up top, you've got page layout. This is where you can change things like the margins of printing. You can change, you know, is it portrait or is it landscape? What's the print area and stuff like that. I'm not really going to get crazy into that. We've messed with some of it a little bit. For instance, we went into header and footer, and this is where we added, you know, Engineering 111, Spring 2017, da-da-da-da-da. We did that in here, so. All right. Any other questions? Okay. The last thing I want to talk to you about today are some more, I guess, minor or very minor issues. So I'm actually going to get into the last lecture, the last Excel lecture, lecture 19, and then we'll sort of call it on Excel. So let me close this. Close that. All right. So I want to talk about additional charts, formula auditing, which formula auditing is basically our way of troubleshooting, and I want to talk about how to protect sheets, which that's going to be very quick. Up until now, when we've plotted stuff, we've really only used X and Y plots. In other words, you've got some column of X data, some column of Y data, make a parabola, make a line, what have you. I do want to show you that there are other ways of plotting data, and specifically the two that are the most common are bar charts and line charts. Okay, and we'll play around with this here in a little bit. But one thing I never want to see you use is a pie chart. Pie charts are horrible. They're horrible. If you had a teacher who told you that pie charts were a good thing, introduce me to them so I can go, no. Pie charts are horrible. And here's why pie charts are horrible. I want somebody to tell me which is the biggest slice, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Right there. That's why. Because the first answer that I heard was, Pie charts are horrible because they're difficult to interpret. I mean, it would be great if every time you used a pie chart you had one massive slice and all the others were tiny. Okay, maybe you'd be making your point. But that's tough, okay? Doesn't really tell you anything. Now, these three pie charts, A, B, and C, these bar charts right here are plotting the same data, okay? There's no ambiguity as to which one's the largest. In this case, the yellow one, 4, that's the largest when I was talking about B. Over here it's 5, over here it's 1, right? What about this one? If I didn't have the percentages listed right here, could you honestly tell me which slice is bigger? No. So if you all make it to senior design, that was a joke, and you are presenting your structural design and you put your cost for your project and you put them in a pie chart, I'm going to walk up and we'll say, stick your hand out. No. No pie charts. It's like, what is it? Anybody remember the Incredibles? No capes. No capes. No pie charts. Don't use pie charts. Really, the one that I'm most interested in is the use of bar charts or line charts. Bar charts or line charts are less ambiguous. You look at this data, so I just made up some data. This is just inventory for the fruit section in a grocery store. So grapes, kiwis, plums, da-da-da-da. Now you can look at the data, and you can see what do they have the most of. They got the most of strawberries, you know. You can plot that, and the plot tells you the same thing. Now I imagine if I did a pie chart of this that, okay, maybe, maybe the pie chart would agree with me, but there'd be so much other noise in the plot that it'd be tough to use. One of the advantages, though, of bar charts and line charts is you can actually label the axis with the data in the cells. So I'm going to pull this up real quick. Okay, so what I can do for a bar chart is since it's only one column of data, I can go in and I can just highlight that data, go to Insert, and insert a bar chart. And there's the data. Very simple. But notice how the axis is labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because Excel doesn't know any better. Excel just thinks that's data point number 1, data point number 2, data point number 3. So what I can do is this. I can go into the chart tools and see where it says select data. I can go in right here. Does everybody see that right up there? Select data. So I select data, and you notice it's plotting that data, but see over here on the right where it says horizontal axis labeled, see that? I can hit edit, and I can say get that set of labels from over here, and hit OK. So if I mess up and I say, oh, those weren't pineapples, those were pistachios. Is that how you spell it? Yeah, which one's not like the others, yeah. But if I messed up, I could just quickly change the label and it updates it on the chart, so it makes your life a little easier, and then you can format accordingly. Now, let me ask you this. Based on this data, what do you think is more appropriate, the bar chart or the line chart? I mean, they're actually both plotting the same data. The bar chart. Now, why do you say the bar chart?
Because the bar chart's the best way to show magnitude.
True, true.
And the labels in the bottom are the
True. Both of those are correct. One other point I want to add to that, a line chart implies connectivity. In other words, that there's some relationship between the amount of grapes that I have and the amount of kiwis that I have. I don't think there's any relationship to that at all. I've got 92 grapes and I got 151 kiwis. They don't have any relationship at all. No, but if you're trying to show trends, for instance, if you were trying to show the average daily traffic on a road in Indiana from 2002 to 2004, that might be the use of a line chart because you're trying to see how it increased over time. You know what I mean? So that might be worth mentioning. But yeah, I would agree that it's easier to interpret a bar chart in this fashion than a line chart. Sound good? Okay. Now, one big ticket item, which I think I was purposefully a little silent on throughout our Excel exercises, but probably would have been quite useful to you, is the skill of auditing your formulas. In other words, you type in some formulas, are they right or not? Okay? So I want to open up in-class exercise 2. That's the one with the projectile motion. Let me close this. Okay, so here's the in-class exercise that we did. If you remember, we were trying to plot that projectile motion. You all were typing in formulas, and maybe they were right, maybe they were wrong. Okay, I want to go to the Formulas tab. Or is it let me see, is it Formulas tab or Review tab? Yeah, Formulas tab. I want to go to the Formulas tab, and if you look over here on the right, you should see a big box that says Formula Auditing. And what I want you to do is I want you to click where it says Show Formulas. Now look what it did. It actually shows you the formulas that you've typed, not just the answer. Okay? So you can notice by looking at the sheet in this fashion, there's a lot of things we can interpret. One of the big things we can interpret is which cells have numbers in them and which cells have formulas in them. And I think at the very beginning that was something that some of us had a little bit of a challenge with. Like you saw the sheet and the answer said 26.2. Oh, that means I got to type in 26.2. No, that's not what that means. That means you need to calculate it so that you get 26.2. Okay? So this was one of the excuse me. That's one of the benefits of this. Another benefit is you don't have to keep clicking in the cell to see what's going on. It's all there. For instance, VOX, C6 times the cosine of C11. I can click that cell, and then it automatically highlights them for me. And click that, bam, automatically highlights them for me. Pretty nifty stuff, isn't it? Not too bad. We should turn that, show those on. Any questions? Another thing that you can utilize is the visual cues of these arrows right here, these trace precedence and trace dependence. So an easy way to explain that is let's take this angle in radians. How did we compute the initial angle in radians? Do y'all remember how we did that? I mean, I just had it up, but remember we had the angle in degrees, which was in 30 degrees, and we're just taking the radians of C5, right? Simple, right? Well, what you can do is if you have a really, really long formula, one of the things you can do is trace precedence. So if I hit trace precedence, look what happened. It put a little arrow on the screen. Now, you notice the only arrow it's got is from C5 to here because it's saying that the only cell that formula relied on was C5, right? That's trace precedence. Now, if you remember, for tracing dependents, we use that cell directly quite a bit. So trace dependents, we at least used it for VOX and VOY. But like, for instance, I think a better telling one would be if I use this. If I trace dependents, look at use that one cell for all those different locations. Y'all remember us doing that? Remember, you think, where did we use that velocity? We used it everywhere, right? So it was a really important cell. Didn't really seem it, but that was actually a pretty important value to get right because we used it, gosh, so many different places. Remove errors. You can remove them, just straightforward. All right. Okay. Any other questions on that? All right. Now, us professors, and I'm sure you all are learning this in your physics lab and your chemistry lab, you do some calculations and you need to write it up in Word, right? I'm sure y'all do that. Here's a nifty little skill for you. Okay? Watch this. All right? Let's say I want to highlight all of this right here, and I want to put it in a Word document. Okay? So remember, what's our keyboard shortcut for copying? Control-C, and then for pasting, Control-V. All right, so here's one way of doing this. I can hit Control-C. I can go here. I can hit Control-V. And it pops it in there, right? But what it doesn't do is the formulas, the calculations. It's just a bunch of text and lines and numbers. I want to show you something else. All right, instead of hitting Control-V, I want you to go right here where it says paste. And I want you to do paste special. And if you note, you should see, if you do it right, you should see something that says Microsoft Excel Worksheet Object. Does everybody see that? Do that. When you paste it in, it might look a little weird, like you've got your lines there. Does everybody see that? Did everybody get yours to do that? Now watch this. What it has done is instead of just pasting some lines and text and numbers, it actually pasted the Excel file itself into Word. So I can literally double click and I'm sort of inside Excel right now. Okay? So I can change the calculations, it'll change the values, and it'll spit that out on the report. Okay? If you've got a big lab report in physics or chemistry or civil engineering materials, and you've got like 5 or 6 different tables of calculations, you can embed them like this all in one Word file. Save you a lot of time. So just something to think about down the line. Last thing I guess that's really worth mentioning is that if you're starting to do some calculations on a new invention that's going to make you millions of dollars, and of course you're going to give your professor royalties on, right? Let's say you've got something you don't want people to mess with. You can password protect your sheets and workbooks. You can go into review and you can let users select cells, or you can tell them, no, you can't select the cells. You can't even see what's in them. You can't open it and do anything. You can password protect them, and you can mess around with that as you please. But it's just something I think I ought to mention. I don't think you're going to need to password protect anything when you're in college, again, unless you're planning on inventing something that makes millions, in which case don't forget royalties for people. It's a joke, not very funny. Any questions that you all have? I know I went through some of this stuff kind of quick, but I think after all the stuff we've done with Excel, I think some of this kind of goes quickly. If I had done this on day one, it might have taken a while, but with the experience that we've had with Excel, I think it goes a little faster. Any questions? All right. So here's what I'm going to do. It's 8:55, and that's my last lecture on Excel. So I'm going to hang out until 9:15, obviously. If you all want to work on your homework assignments, that's fine. Again, You are responsible to turn in homework 5 between now and 8 a.m. on March 14th. If you want to come in to turn it in that morning, that's fine. If you want to turn it in now, sometime this week, that's fine. As long as I get it by the morning on March 14th, that's good. So I'll be around, but we will not have class, official class, on the 14th or the 16th. So, yes. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, yeah. Yes, absolutely. I'm just going to make sure the math's done correctly. Yeah. All right. Anything else? Well, if I don't see you, it's actually going to be about 2 weeks before I see you because we're not going to have class next week and we're not going to have spring break. So I hope that you all have a wonderful break. When you get back, hold on, guys, one quick thing. When you get back, get ready to program because we're doing some MATLAB, so get ready for it. That's all I got for you all. If I don't see you, have a fantastic break. We'll see you when you get back.